Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our October 2025 version of Career Conversations, Illuminating Career Pathways for Huskies Who Want to Make a Difference, sponsored by Center for Nonprofit and NGO Studies, or NNGO. The center is committed to the growth and development of civil society through research, community engagement, and training for the next generation of community leaders. We are essentially helping next generation folks to be good at doing good. We are known as a Make a Difference major. Uh, we have a we have a very exciting lineup tonight. We have Ana Elizarraga, who received her MPA in 2017, worked for the city of Evanston. Paola Garibay, also in 17, Village of Oak Park. Nicolas Garcia Lisle, received his JD in 2018, formerly the city of St. Charles. And we're co-sponsoring this with the Illinois Local Government Hispanic Network and NAU's Alumni Council. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, the three of you, Ana, Paola, and Nicholas, for being here today. So, Julianne, I see you're off camera. We'll just have her words of welcome be her words of blessing at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started with the questions. So, just why don't we start with please introduce yourself and tell us about your background and where you currently work. Why don't we start with Paola?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Professor Schuler and Julie Ann, again for this opportunity. I'm really excited for the collaboration and to have a presence here with ILGHN and NIU and to share some words of wisdom, hopefully, with my fellow Huskies. So my name is Paola Garibay. I am currently employed as the Neighborhood Partnerships Administrator with the Village of Oak Park. It is actually a newly formed role, a newly formed division, so I'm kind of figuring out what that all entails. But in a nutshell, it is really focused on encouraging civic and community engagement throughout the Village of Oak Park. I also oversee the special events permitting process, and I serve as the point of contact for any resources. People come into the village, they need to get connected, they don't know where to go. It's my job to make that connection internally or externally with partners in the community.
You. Do you go by Nicholas or Nick?
Either are good.
Okay. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share whatever I can, but take it at your own peril. Whatever advice I share, it's your risk to assume. No guarantee that it will work. Yeah, you could probably guess I'm a lawyer by trade, currently. I didn't start out that way. I started out with a much more I don't know how to phrase this, moral compass, a brighter moral compass to begin. I'm just kidding. But so I started I went to NIU specifically for, it used to be called Community Leadership and Civic Engagement, now nonprofit studies and or nonprofit and NGO studies. And my passion was always public service. I stayed true to that passion. I did sell out a little bit, I will be honest, but I'm here to talk about all the exciting things that you can do from my perspective and all the career avenues that still exist for those who are interested in taking an alternative path, but still being involved in in public service. I did formerly used to work for the city of St. Charles. That's kind of how I started my shtick and my interest in public service, in local government specifically. And that led, one thing led to another. I can get into that a little more later. Now I currently work for a company called Littler, which is a labor employment law firm. It is the largest labor employment law firm in the world, representing all types of industry, including the nonprofit sector. And so in my role, I do advise like several associations, and I advise some true charitable organizations. And I have a pro bono client who I also serve on the board for and a special labor counsel. And so I'm happy to talk about that today too. Um, and additionally, in my own professional association, I serve for as a DE&I chair for the Minnesota State Bar Association. So that's kind of what I've been up to now. I graduated from NIU in 2018. I went to Chicago, Kent, for labor employment after I fell in love with human resources while working in local government for the city of St. Charles. There, I learned like how much people matter in making a difference in the community, and I really wanted to work. I really wanted to leverage my interpersonal uh, affinity and passion, and so I decided to go down a route where all I do is day to day is help leverage people and navigate people in order to improve the workplace.
Thank you, Nick. And I neglected to mention that this is careers in community and local government. And Nick, if it's any consolation, my organizer friends called me a sellout for becoming a professor. We are still in touch. Some of them continue to join us in Power, our yearly weekend empowerment community organizing retreat. I was on a panel a couple years ago. We are still in touch, but yeah. But the many paths to justice, not a straight line, but you're here with us today. And last but not least, Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ana Elizarraga, and I am a housing and economic development analyst for the city of Evanston. I manage, disperse, and comply with the housing and urban development grants for the city of Evanston. And we disperse those funds to local nonprofits for homeless or at-risk people in our community. So I am still kind of working in the nonprofit world, just in the funding side of things. I graduated in 2017 with a community leadership and civic engagement double major with philosophy. And I did my master's in public admin and finished in 2019 with a local government management track. I also have a minor in social entrepreneurship and a certificate in applied ethics. So all of that combo works really well in local government, and it's every day that I use the skills that I learned in Professor Schuler's and Professor O'Connell's class. So it's been a path, but like the flyer says, all paths lead to public service. So very happy to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for coming. All of us touched briefly on what your major and minor were certificate, but if you can tell us about your time, what you would hope to do post-graduation. Some folks figure it out right away. Some folks have an internship experience. Some folks have just a life experience that really sets them on a path where they feel like they have to solve a particular issue. And some folks figure it out after they've graduated and discover that this was not for them, but this is. Anna, why don't you go ahead and give us a start? You did mention your major, and but tell us what you would hope to do when you graduate.
So when I first started my career, I just did it for the love of learning and philosophy. I did not know exactly what I was going to be doing at the end of my career. All I knew is that I had way too much philosophy credits and I needed like 46 more to be able to graduate from NIU. And I talk about this all the time, but I saw this poster walking down, I believe it was Douglas, and it said, "Do you want to change the world?" like in big white letters. And I said, yes. And that poster was for community leadership, civic engagement. So it really drew me in, and I feel like it draws a certain kind of people that want to serve somehow, some way. And I didn't really know the path that I wanted to take back then, but I loved my CLCE or nonprofit studies classes. And in one of them, they talked about the collaboration between the public and the nonprofit sector. And that's when, like, kind of like there was like a aha moment of like, this is what I want to be doing, and I want to pursue the master's in public administration rather than like a business degree. So One person that was instrumental to me in my career was Alicia Chapman. She really championed and fostered the public administration and public sector careers, and really showed me that it was possible for someone that looked like me to be able to work in local government. So I really want to like thank her, because if it wasn't for her, I would probably be in corporate America somewhere. So that was kind of like my pathway into local government. I knew that I wanted to serve in one way or another, but I didn't really exactly know how or where I was going to end up. And I just want to push that message out there that it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're not too sure of where your life is going to be leading you post-graduation. Just follow your heart. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but follow your heart, stick to your values, and you'll end up in a good place.
And following your heart is often, an overlooked but a really important advice. Paola?
Yeah, so I think I kind of jumped the gun and I didn't tell you guys about my educational background, but real quick, I did get my undergraduate degree from the NIU College of Business. So I went with the management degree with the focus in management and leadership. And I also was interested in marketing and communication. So I got a minor in marketing. I kind of got similar to Anna. I had these credits and I was like, how can I get more out of my degree and my time at NIU? So I went for a retail management certificate, which I actually enjoyed some of those classes quite a lot. That led me to an internship with Target. Was my first internship was as a executive assistant or something like that. But it was really on the track to see like you're going to be a retail store manager, and I absolutely hated it. And so I knew that wasn't the track for me. Going into business, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I just figured that business was a catch-all. I would have job security in one place or another, and I knew I saw myself in some type of management role down the line, but I didn't know exactly how I'd get there. And in business school, they really ingrained into us that 85%, I think this is a statistic they said, 85% of business students will go into sales as their first career. So I actually went the route of attending several of the career fairs at NIU. I looked at the major employers for their College of Business, and I ended up applying for several positions. And the one I landed an offer with before graduation was with C.H. Robinson, which was it's a third-party logistics company. And I went there as a sales executive. I hated it. And then I transitioned into an internal sales, which was as an account manager. I quickly also realized I did not like that, but I was employed through the pandemic and I was really lucky to stay there. But it got to a point where I was just not happy. I didn't feel motivated. I felt like I wanted to have more of an impact in the work that I did. And I got to the point where I was ready to just start from scratch. I was looking at jobs in the nonprofit sector, in local governments. Maybe I thought I was interested in HR at some point. So I was really applying for administrative assistance, knowing that I was overqualified and I was going to take a pay cut, but that is just how much I realized I did not want to work in corporate America. I was lucky enough to land my next role with the Berwyn Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit that operates under a public-private partnership with the city of Berwyn. And they do economic development services for the city of Berwyn. They also have a Chamber of Commerce department, which is what I was hired to do, is to be the manager of the Chamber of Commerce. And I knew little about chambers of commerce. I just thought of ribbon cuttings for new businesses. But they thought that my background in, sales and customer service would align well with the position. And I went into it knowing that it would be somewhat of a sales role because you are selling membership. You're trying to get people to be a part of this chamber. Quickly realized I did not like that. I am not motivated by sales. However, I was fortunate enough to be in a place where there was an opportunity to grow into the economic development department. And even though I was a manager in the Chamber of Commerce, I kind of demoted myself to be a project manager and work under somebody else in the economic development team because it was an opportunity for me to learn a new skill set. I would be working closely with the business community, which I was passionate about. It was in a largely Hispanic community, which I I grew up in the neighboring town of Cicero. So that really felt like something where I could make a difference. In that role, I managed grants for small businesses, helping them redevelop their commercial properties, working closely with Cook County government and helping businesses get funds as part of the COVID recovery. So that really sparked my interest and said, wow, I can see how the work that I do every single day makes an impact in the community and in the lives of these business owners. And somebody who was really impactful in my career would be my executive director at that time, which his name was David Holzberg, and he's actually an NIU MPA alumni. So he really told me about a career in local government, and he was always encouraging me to pursue that kind of route. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but he said, hey, I'll let you take this role in project management and economic development, though you don't have any experience, but you have to go back to school and pursue a degree that is relevant in the field so that you can have the skills to do this job. So I was very, very fortunate to land that role there because the Borough Development Corporation supported me with tuition for the MPA program at NIU. I actually ended up staying there for almost 4 years and really knowing now that I wanted to go into local government, I started looking at different positions. And Dave really supported me in doing that. He said, hey, start looking because these opportunities come and you never know. Like, if you're going to be uncomfortable, it means you're growing. I heard that from so many people. So I went ahead and took that opportunity, which is how I now ended up with the Village of Oak Park. Not yet finished with my MPA, but just putting another thing on myself that I said, I can do this. And here we are today.
Here we are. Yes. Sounds very inspiring. Love the intention behind the learning opportunities and the growth opportunities. So, Nicholas.
I so my path took a couple or a few surprising turns that I didn't expect, and I kind of just followed where my interest and passion were telling me to follow the most. But it started in high school pretty much. I was a youth commissioner on the Commission for Planning and Zoning for the Village of Romeoville at the age of 17. And I found it really weird that in a village of like 30 to 40% Hispanic people, that the commission had no Latinos on it. The city council had no Latinos on it. And so my parents in the workplace, in their own personal jobs, they just had bad experiences. My mom in particular, who was a Latina woman, and I just saw her experience more stuff than my white dad, of course. And those two experiences, so kind of having that, those things happened around the same time, and I was on a commission, and I just remember one day I just said, like, why would you put that there? It was we were looking at blueprints. And someone just said, "Oh, well, we didn't think about it. We'll take another look. We'll take another look at the plan and come back to the next meeting with blah 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 blah." And I wasn't even a voting member. I was just a member, and it wasn't even necessarily the issue that mattered, but it was the fact that I had a voice, and the voice that improved something that no one else on the commission like thought about. And so that kind of inspired me to go into a profession where I could have some voice or input, and I wanted it to be meaningful and public service oriented. And my experience at that time was local government. And so I went to NIU specifically because they had this make a difference major and minor available. And naturally, I wanted to just pursue a degree that had its bedrock foundation rooted in making a difference. Um, I had like some great, like I had a management intern role with DeKalb County Services, uh, DeKalb County Youth Services Bureau. And I really liked kind of the administrative stuff, which some people don't like the administrative stuff, but I like reading and I like research and I like surveys and I like all the stuff that a lot of people don't like, but I liked it. And I found a comparable position that did more like HR stuff when I was looking for internships with the city of St. Charles. And so I said, you know what? I like city. I like administrative stuff. I like HR from this one class I took that semester before. I was like, let's just see what happens. And so I fell in love with the HR profession in local government specifically, and there is a difference because I advise. Oh, a quick caveat. I could go on. I'm going to try not to go on too many tangents. I apologize in advance. But I currently also advise cities. I forgot to mention that for about 3 years, I advised over 40 plus cities that as my clients in the state of Minnesota as their labor employment attorney specifically, helping them navigate all types of things from excessive use of force issues with police officers to um, naughty employees in the fire department, public works department, et cetera, helping them navigate those very, again, issues that people don't like to touch upon. Sometimes it's the supervisor's most stressful day in their career to deal with firing someone, but that's why you hire someone who comes in and just walks you through it and helps you navigate it in order to improve the workplace. But anyway, so local government, I fell in love with HR specifically, and then I went to law school to do HR law pretty much. Graduated there, and then I went to work for the next few years uh, at this local government specific law firm in Minnesota where I had the opportunity to advise primarily cities. I wanted to do a little broader advising, which is why I actually moved on to this other firm. So now I get to do cities, nonprofits, foundations, associations, and companies. And I'll let you in on a secret. My favorite is still working with cities, because it's just that was the start of my passion, and it still is to this day. I forgot your other question, components of your question. What was it?
It was a conversation. So I think, it's leading us into wonderful new insights. And so I think, and it is your point about the like working for cities helps us think through like really specifically like a question we're thinking about is what are specific skill sets you're drawing on unique to working within local government? How do they
Mm.
differ from that of, say, a nonprofit or for-profit company? Um, don't mean to put anyone in particular on the spot, but it's a particular entity. So Anna,
So I initially went into philosophy because I particularly dislike math. And then I was awakened, like rudely awakened by my symbolic logic class and realized that it was far from mathematics. Mathematics is very much a huge part of my philosophy degree, and also of nonprofit and NGO studies, and more so for the MPA program. So particular skills, make sure that you're up to date on your Excel. Excel will be your best friend no matter where you go. So learn those formulas, those cheat codes, pivot tables, because you will need it for grad school, for your career. You will be asked to do comparative research on different communities, on different topics. Um, you want to learn how to study populations and sets in populations. So statistics, math, and Excel are skills that will be really helpful no matter where you go, even if it is in humanities. So that's my 2 cents.
thank you.
I could add, give some, maybe perhaps two nuanced of examples, but I'll give two examples. Money, 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 and due process. Those are the two big differences I see between private employers and public employers. Public employers, so local governments, they have to always consider due process in almost every action they're taking. And in the context of employment, public employees, they have additional free speech considerations. They have additional their their existence as a citizen of the United States or as a resident of the United States is not diminished when they are a public employee just by the virtue of being an employee. And there's caveats to that. There's legal tests and there are limits to that. But that is something that is the first thing that should be on an employer's, local government employer's mind first and foremost when they are deciding whether or not to make a decision when it comes to property. Because as you both could probably attest to, like in the community development context, or even partnering with nonprofits, and when you're talking about land use issues, like very administrative stuff, um, there are certain procedures that have to be followed. Otherwise, the decision that's made can just completely be undone. They're not just there for fun. Money. Money is really big. Part of my job is negotiating for employers with unions. That could be SEIU, it could be IBEW, Local 49 or 49ers, Teamsters, whatnot. It looks different when you're negotiating wages, and it is different, and there's different considerations when you're negotiating wages in the public sector versus the private sector. Because when in the public sector, you're talking about tax dollars. You're talking about money that if you don't spend it, it's not going into someone's pocket. It's going back to being invested into the community. It's being diverted for other public purposes. And if it's not being used for public purposes, then it doesn't belong in the city or the village's pocketbook. But that's not the case. It's in the pocketbook to be spent for public purposes. When you are a private employer, at the end of the day, the goal is to make money. There are several other goals that like employers that are maybe like more charitable, or they are more they have they might have different goals, but at the end of the day, a for-profit business is for profit, and so the arguments look different at the table too, because you're not advocating for responsible fiscal management of tax dollars. You're advocating for not irresponsible spending that's going to hurt shareholders' pocketbooks. So I think those are two very perhaps I'm being very literal. Those are actual considerations that are taken. There's no judgment on one or the other, but that is just the reality when you're in the private versus public context in employment.
I will add to that, yes, money. Everyone will remind you that their tax dollars pay your salaries and they want to make sure that you are putting them to good use. But kind of answering this question in a community engagement perspective, I would say a couple of skill sets that have been really instrumental in my role, both in the nonprofit sector and in local government, have been collaboration. I have to collaborate with staff across all sorts of departments, where I may look at one of my peers who's also in a middle management role, and they are very niche to their adjudication. They deal only with court cases and folks that way, but I have to know who the fire chief is, who the police chief is, who the public works director is, and then I also have to know who their staff is and who are my peers in the management level, and make sure that we're communicating with each other so that we actually get the work done. So definitely understanding that people have different communication styles is important, because you might be, approaching things from two different perspectives, but still need to find a way to find that common ground and get the goals accomplished. So all those group projects that you're probably doing now, and maybe you love them, maybe you hate them, they're not going to go away. So you need to learn how to collaborate and work with others well. What else? Definitely just in local government, policy, right, procedures. I was always somebody who really liked to have things done by the book. And I've found in both my nonprofit and local government roles, very different to my time with C.H. Robinson in the corporate world, is that a lot of these policies, procedures some of them are very much in place, zoning ordinances and what have you. A lot of these things don't exist. So something simple, I don't know how familiar you all are with like Outlook 365 and scheduling meeting rooms and all that. That is something that was not available in Oak Park. as of this year. So, just knowing that some places might be a little bit more behind, people kind of have a lot of institutional knowledge. So I've taken it upon myself, and it's a big part of my role, is to really write down the standard operating procedures so that me and my team can function well, but also so that we can leave something in writing behind for the next, group of people who come into my role.
I'm gonna hop in here. I love when we think ahead, and I know Nico, Paola, you and Nico think the same way. It sounds like you are very like, how do we document? How do we make this better for the next people? I'm curious, each of you talked about how you really like working with cities. Would you ever consider working for like a state? Or what's the difference like working for a county or something? What is it about cities right now, local government in that way that you like better than the other things?
I think for me is the proximity to residents and constituents. So we have a very close connection to the residents that we serve. Um, the legislative process and public comments are very much hearing people that you literally work for give you instant feedback on things that they like, but most importantly on things that they do not like. So you get that feedback back very quickly. And it's very satisfactory to see your work pay off in different things. So where it be like funding for a local shelter or seeing a family be placed in permanent housing after being homeless for a number of days or months. Finally finding a home, it's very, very rewarding. It's hard work. Like Nick says, it's all about compliance. It's all about ethics. It's all about following rules and regulations. It's very hard work, but it's very rewarding at the same time. I don't know if state or corporate would have that like closeness to the people that you work for. So at least for me, that's why I think local government interested me more.
I would echo what Anna said, really the direct impact that you can see that your day-to-day work has in the community that you serve. I give the example of administering grants for the business community in Berwyn. It was amazing to see how much of an impact that had on a small mom and pop restaurant who's has these dreams of having their first time business. They bought a property that was a fixer upper, and they were able to get up to $50,000 in reimbursement for renovation that is now a staple in the community. People go there to get their coffee, to get their lunch, and seeing, just the look on their faces, knowing that this is a lasting impact because that business is now established for X amount of years. That really, really does it for me. Coming from the corporate world, I did have to answer to things that were happening that were really beyond my control. I was behind the screen. I was dealing with clients that were on opposite sides of the country. Maybe the distributor was in California and the end receiver was in New York, and there were literal trucks on fire sometimes in logistics that I couldn't solve behind the desk. I feel like I have a little bit more control of what the outcome is of the work that I do in local government.
I think advising states, that one's easily, or state departments or bureaus or whatever, that's a little more removed, so it's easier to say there's less proximity there, and that's true. So there's some overlap, and there's like same reasoning why I would like, or why I like advising state entities, and that's because it's a public service and I like that it has a wide-reaching impact. I'm more passionate about local government for the opposite reason, specifically cities, because when I go into a Caribou and oh wait, I'm in Minnesota. I forgot. There's no Caribous anymore in the Chicago area. When I go into
Yeah.
that was telling. But when I go into it was a Caribou that I had this thought for a city where I was the city attorney at it was and I there was a major issue, not a major, it wasn't an issue. I was involved with a new utility, a new water and wastewater utility. And I just remember thinking, negotiating a contract and some other components that had an aftermath related to that, navigating that, whatever. But I remember thinking like, this is why I do it. I walked in there, I asked for a cup of water with whatever sandwich I bought, and I just got drinking water, and I was like, this water is great. It's perfect. I mean, it's just like right there. I had just driven into town, and it's just something so simple, that I had a very, very indirect impact on that drinking water. Very indirect, but I had a tiny little impact. Um, and that I really appreciated. For a county, it's a little different, because they typically take over the services that are not being handled where like the most of the people live, or they take on some odd services, not odd services, but I had one county with that had a cemetery department, and before advising them on some groundskeeper issues that they had going on, I forgot that cemeteries in some places are publicly owned, but they take on odd services, that most cities just don't do or don't want to. Um, and so I like them, but they just have a less in your face impact. And so I like I selfishly like local government cities a little bit more than counties just because you get to see them direct impact. And then states, I like that it has a wider impact. So kind of the opposite, that I might never see, but it's great that I had a little piece in it.
Awesome. Thanks, you three.
So we're learning a lot about the differences between different levels of government, which is really important. And it's especially important now when we're in this 20th day of a federal government shutdown. Um, and that puts strain on local governments in a way that you haven't seen in quite some time. The skill set that you have drawn on to, in your various degrees, you all come from very different educational backgrounds. You have philosophy, you have business, you have law, but also have like community engagement. Talk about how that's drawing on your skill set of like right now. How do you, because as you mentioned, like you're reminded all the time that the taxpayers pay for your salaries, and you have to in some way justify that you have a job. How do you navigate that?
I'll go first. Right now, in my position and in my department, we're always in the middle of some strategic plan or consolidated plan or 5-year, 20-year strategic plan that we have to answer to HUD for. And through this process of getting those plans to the Housing and Urban Development Department, we have to do a lot of public input sessions. And just this past week, I was reminded of my class with Professor Schuler when we had to go out and canvass DeKalb for, I believe it was the DeKalb Gardens that we were canvassing for. And they asked if there were any volunteers that could canvass some of the parts of Evanston, that we could pass out flyers so that people could provide their input on a survey for housing for all plan. And we wanted to reach everyone in our communities, not only particular people. So I remember those days of canvassing around DeKalb, and I wanted to do that again. I wanted to feel like I was part of a community. So I grabbed my stack of Spanish and English flyers and went out into the community and posted flyers all over the city, and then passed them around in like churches, community groups, community centers. Um, so it really brought me back to community leadership and civic engagement, that you never stop being a leader, you never stop serving. Like that's our life. And I'm really glad that I went through that training in the nonprofit and non-governmental organizations world, because now I can take that into my job and be a better leader for it. So very grateful that I had those skills.
Do you have a clipboard? Did you keep a clipboard? Just out of curiosity.
I do have a clipboard, yes.
I will say this is my first role in local government, and it's during a very tumultuous time. So I am navigating and learning and growing as I go. But I can definitely see the direct impact and kind of difficulties that come with having the federal government presence in Oak Park. One example is we found in the first couple weeks where this operation began is that they were coming into our village hall parking lot and overnights were just sneaking in where people weren't seeing them. And then some staff were arriving early in the morning, seeing them transport individuals. And we had an outcry from the public saying, we don't want them here, we don't want this. So with HR and the legal department, they scrambled up some sort of solution temporarily to put up barricades at the entrances and signage. Now we have security really limiting access to the lot to be only staff or those who are there on village business. That received a mixed response, right? There was a lot of people who said, do something, do something. And then there's the angry folk who come in and say, this is where my tax dollars are going. So learning to stay neutral in those situations, and if you are not the expert, really not is one of my biggest fears that I'm still trying to figure out is making sure I'm not overcommitting or giving the wrong answer to something, especially when it's such a sensitive topic. So really leaning on the resources and reaching out to folks who could have a better prepared response to something like that. But yeah, it's definitely impacting us at the local level.
And for me, it looks a little different since I'm in an advising role versus like a doing role. I'm not an administrator. So a lot of my work is more behind the scenes and less like, we're talking about barricades. I'm not in that situation. But I've had a client who I've had to help figure out how to keep their trans employees safer and how to keep undocumented employees safer, like comprehensively throughout the whole organization, from removing all employees like photos from websites and contact information and making sure like taking steps to funnel public folks through through one person or whatnot to limit the amount of employees' emails that are out there, especially for public employees where their names, and at least in Minnesota, under the Data Practices Act, a public employee's name and contact information is public data, and so anyone can get it. But you don't necessarily have to just put it out there on the website. And so there's creative avenues we can take to just kind of mitigate unnecessary easy access to that information and still provide a service. So kind of navigating those issues. And the federal government has put such a strain on entities that nonprofits, uh, cities, counties that receive federal funding, and an indirect impact on their budget because of the uncertainty of what's to come. And so one example of that is one nonprofit is behind the state is behind several months in paying this nonprofit. They have the money. The state has the money in this situation, and I know they have the money. I couldn't say that, but the state has the money in that context, but they are being extra cautious. And so I advise the client, like, it's going to sound funny, but it's as simple as writing a letter. And I just told them what to say. And they were afraid of straining their relationship, this nonprofit executive director with the contract administrator at the state. They were afraid of like straining their relationship by sending this nastygram letter. And I said, well, tell them your board of directors directed you to and gave you no option. And here's the letter from the board, not from you. And so Ghost wrote that, and basically, boom, within a week, they got their funding. So that stuff's happening, and there is situations where where the state there is no money to come down from the federal government that was supposed to. But usually, because usually it's a pass-through situation, and some grants have been just right now, especially there's no money to access in that situation for some nonprofits because the pass-through hasn't happened yet. But luckily, at least to date, a lot of the pass-through funds happened like last year or earlier in the year. And so the state still had the funding, but they're taking steps that make it harder to get that funding because they're scrutinizing where they're spending money because they know that there's going to be a lack of it later.
Gosh, you all have such really varied and really specific experiences, and that you have to draw on like lots of your brain all at once. And it's just, it's really humbling to be like thinking that, what we're teaching folks in school may be relevant, but may be relevant in a completely different way than we had imagined, and that you do have the tools, and that's part of a liberal arts education, that you get a well-rounded, like the writing, the reading, and sorry about the math. And I did have somebody in my methods class literally run out of the computer lab in having a panic attack when we did the Excel. So it's, if we can just somehow make that, I don't know, Elmo like, like it's okay to be afraid of Excel, but like, Elmo like Excel or something, something that, I don't know, making it demystify the process, making it a lot less scary. But what would you say that you learned at NIU that's most useful to you and in your like thinking on your feet, like kind of like, and particularly now? Sorry, this is off script, but you've already answered our prepared questions and then some.
I think two very important things that I learned through my time at NIU is critical thinking skills, questioning things, and also having emotional intelligence, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, being comfortable with ambiguous situations that you cannot control, and knowing when to detach emotionally from those situations. Because although we would want to control many things, it is out of our power or scope of power to do so. So being able to be a sounding board to people that might be going through distress, and letting them know that it's okay, that we will be getting through whatever it is that is happening, and remaining calm in situations. So.
I would say in my role being newly formed, there's a lot of new things that are being asked of me to do. So really the analysis and the research, taking a case, all the case studies I've had to write so many memos on for the MPA program, it's really been helpful in taking a look at a problem or the need or whatever it is that the board of director or board of trustees or the board of directors and nonprofit, what they want to see, their vision, and then building that from scratch. So knowing where to pull on resources, that's the second thing I'll say, is just having that network, which maybe isn't directly taught in the class, but it's very much ingrained that we need to reach out to our peers, have that network of folks, go out and make these connections, be it through ILCMA, be it through ILGHN, any type of association group, student groups that you have, student organizations, start building those connections now, because they really are going to help you in the future. Maybe you are developing a program that's brand new to Oak Park, which is what I did. And then I sent Hira, who is a member of ILGHN, an email earlier today saying, hey, I see that you have this program already in Highland Park, and I'm trying to start from scratch. Can you help me get some tools so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel? Making those connections, being present, going to the networking events, doing professional development. It's helped me get through the door and get some interviews in places, because those people have already seen the type of work that I can do. They connected with me, and that has just gotten me to where I am today.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot it was next in the circle that we made. Uh, I'm just gonna rattle things off in my head because these are just qualities or things that I know I developed in this program specifically. And that was and I emphasized in advocacy, I think when it was an emphasis. I don't know if it is. Is it?
We don't
No?
have emphases anymore. Everything is
Oh.
emphasized.
Ah, shit. I mean, shoot, I'm dating myself.
Single CE dates yourself. A lot of folks really do not like NNGO. They just got really bugged when we renamed ourselves. So like
I like it.
two
Actually, let me give credit to that real quick because when I say like what I studied, I use an NGO or nonprofit studies because it's understood. Um, I did go to NIU for community leadership and civic engagement, but when I talk to clients and whatnot about what I studied, it does make sense. So I'll give you some credit there for its due. But advocacy, that is something, being comfortable and being confident, walking into a room, the constant training of how to network, that is, I mean, that's the bread and butter of my profession. You can't get clients or keep clients in my profession unless you can work a room, unless you can talk, unless you can be a good listener, unless you can be empathetic, literally reading a room. And some lawyers can't read a room. And so I have a leg up from being able to read a room, from developing those networking skills, those listening skills, those empathy skills, because we talk about empathy a lot in the context of employment. When you're studying for your career in the nonprofit sector, there's always an empathetic component to it that you are considering, which is a little different from even political science, which is my other major, where your empathy is important, but it's not a factor that's talked about in almost every conversation. So nonprofits, just by their very nature, you're always you always have an empathetic hat on. Um, that actually helped me be increase my emotional intelligence. I'm pretty certain. Because at my last job, my current job, and I'm giving credit because I know I wasn't all that emotionally intelligent before. Um, that helped me be the client keeper, client retainer. I get sent in when somebody needs to get sent in to retain relationships. But that is really important, keeping calm and taking criticism. I felt comfortable going to law school and getting beat with a bat of criticism before I went to law school. And I give credit to Julianne, and I'm just kidding. No, I'm just joking. But no, you, Stephanie Coomer, and Gloria Simo gave me such great feedback on every assignment I ever did, and it was always constructive. It was always framed, here's how you can do it better. And that really kind of framed my brain to think, to expect criticism and understand where it's coming from. Even when people can't explain where it's coming from as great as you can, or Stephanie or Gloria or Dr. Simo can, it really helped me prepare for law school, where I was unfazed when I got even the roughest of criticism. The criticism may not have been substantively rougher, but it was delivered a little rougher. Advocacy, confidence, working a room, taking criticism, listening skills, emotional intelligence, all those things are things that I think I really honed in on in the nonprofit program.
And both you and Paola gave fantastic segues into tomorrow. We're doing this every semester. We do a networking event co-sponsored with the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership. So for those of our students, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And now you know why. You said it way better than I could. We have two very, very good questions that students had come up with. And so I want to give everyone a chance to answer them both. And I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to read them out loud. What percentage of day-to-day responsibilities is working behind the desk or doing an analysis, and what percent involves communicating with people? And then the last one is, I used to be with a nonprofit, but I didn't learn a lot about the administrative side. What one or two things would you say to prepare for if I wanted to start a nonprofit? The first question was from Dinesh Kaveri. The second was from Jermel Pope.
Not to dissuade anybody from starting a nonprofit, but I'm going to say that there's over 1 million nonprofits in the US. So if you don't start one, it's okay, you can join one. So don't try to reinvent the wheel or duplicate efforts. Join efforts that have been started already and make them great. And then you can branch off. So that's one. And then the second question, I believe it's, I think, I want to say for myself, because I'm in compliance and grant compliance, I think it's a good 70-30. I do a lot of back end analysis and grant writing, grant compliance. And then 30% is that community feedback. So it's about 70-30.
Thank you.
I would say in my role, it has been 60-40 on any given day. One could be 60, the other one could be 40, or they could flip. It just really depends. If there is like a grant that's happening and there's a deadline, I'm probably going to be talking to folks 60% of the time, doing technical assistance, and then crying behind my desk trying to advance some of the reporting that I have to get done. But yeah, so when you're really customer facing, front facing, it's going to change on any given day with whatever is happening with the politics, whatever programs out, deadlines. And then as far as starting a nonprofit, I don't really have much to say there other than what Anna said. I think to learn, if you wanted to start one, would definitely be to join one and understand the ins and outs of it. And I just like to be a sponge. Every opportunity I have to learn something new, you never know how that skill set is going to develop in the future. So take what you can, talk to people, be inquisitive, and learn as you go.
I never use this phrase. I swear to God, I don't. And people hate when they hear it, but it depends. And so almost every lawyer will say that, and sorry. But it most I oh, that was a really strong oh, you're hearing my Minnesota sleep out or slip out. I would say most situations it could be a 50-50. I always try to do a phone call when I can. One, because the client does not want to spend money on something that could take me 5 minutes to say versus 15 minutes to write out. So being very practical. But like 50-50, like comprehensively. So in my preference is to do the not behind the desk stuff. I like being at the bargaining table, negotiating. I like being on the phone, calling up people who I can. I guess I'm still behind a desk, especially now during, post COVID and whatnot. But then one week I could be writing a brief and I might be behind my desk, under my table, in the closet, crying, whatever, for 100% of the time that week. And so, but it is what you make it. I take on these clients, these projects and stuff in my context. And so, and so I can, when I've been strapped to my desk for a few weeks at a time, I can say, okay, I'm not taking that kind of assignment again, or I'm going to say I don't have the capacity anymore, even if I do, because I need to do other work and use my brain in other places because I'm mentally just wiped out. Um, so in the skill, I mean, I learned how to use, well, not to prolong it too much, but I learned how to use a semicolon at NIU from Stephanie Coomer, by the way. I learned how to use the word that less, the word that in sentences less. And like those simple things I think about almost on a weekly basis. Like I try to remind myself like how to use a semicolon, like where this is a proper place for a semicolon and whatnot. So writing is a lot in my job. Luckily, I don't have to do forms. I just have to tell the client what forms to do. So I get out of that. But those forms do look grueling and monotonous.
Well, thank you all for sharing such really impactful and surprisingly like all over the place, but like really curious and really intentional about ways that you're prioritizing self-care and growth. It's been really inspiring for me to hear, and thank you all. Any last words of advice you'd like to offer our current Huskies?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Always seek out your professors. If you're not getting a topic or a concept, reach out and ask your peers, network, build relationships.
It's okay to not know. Don't be afraid to start over. I've done it several times. You never know what ebbs and flows your life is going to take your career. So just go for it and always be learning. Because like I said, all the skills, all the experiences that you take in, it's going to help you in the future. It's just going to shape you into a more well-rounded individual for any organization that you serve. And network. Yes, network.
Put yourself out there. Sometimes, like if I'm putting myself out there to someone I may never see again, I'm like, whatever. If I embarrass myself, they won't even remember my last name. Um, and so I would say just that has opened so many doors. Thinking back to NIU, when I was trying to, I went up to Dr. Simo and I said at one point, like, my passion started in community development. I want to make a difference here, XYZ, working with these kinds of nonprofits doing these more humanity-based services. And I went on a trip with her and some other students to New Orleans. That became an experience that I talked about forever and opened doors for me. And I go to New Orleans regularly and also have fun now there. Um, and so I say don't be afraid to just put yourself out there. Tell people where your interests lie. You'll be surprised how many people want to help you achieve that, especially in the Latino community. Like, reach out to people. Don't be afraid to make the connection. There was one person that I like got made a connection with when I was in law school in Chicago, and that person is a client for a company for this firm that I now work with, almost 6, 7 years later from when I met her. And I never knew it was going to come full circle.
It's so amazing. Thank you. Thank you all. And when I was 8 years in Minnesota, people used to think they could hear the Chicago in me, and I guess that never left. So I feel unique. So,
It is whenever I say the word naughty cops, like when I'm doing excessive use of force issues, like city councils like eat that up. They die when they, but I don't know how else to say it, so it is what it is.
Julianne, would you like to say some parting words of gratitude, or some of your reactions or thoughts?
Yeah, it's so fun to be on our end, you guys. And especially in these times, I feel like when we hear from you alumni and the amazing kind of work, and it's so, gosh, across the board, everything you guys are doing is different. Um, I feel some hope in the world that there are young people who really do care. Although like some of you are not so young anymore, you're having children and all of that stuff. So not teasing Nick. Like I look back and I think of your time, at NIU, and I think, oh, you know what, we're in good hands. You guys are passionate about what you're doing, and can you can name the skills that you had before. And so thank you for taking time to be with us tonight. And I think for our students to be able to hear from alumni, you guys talk in a way that's honest, and you understand, the NIU way. So thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be with us tonight.
And thank you for those who haven't noticed. They are putting their contact info in the chat, so you can, you know, keep that conversation going. And speaking of conversation, we have our last one for the fall is going to be Monday, November 17th. I believe it's going to be careers in advocacy.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So another exciting topic. Thank you all. Be good to yourselves. Be good to your community. And we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. Take care, everyone.
Take care.